Maurer, CNBC Business Radio.
Have you had trouble with online dating? This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. We've created a new solution, EH Plus. EH Plus combines the personal attention of a matchmaker with eHarmony's extensive pool of great singles. EH Plus gives you hand-selected matches and freedom from being online. Get started today. Call 855-930-LOVE. That's 855-930-LOVE.
Hey, it's Flo, and this is my impression of a coach giving the ultimate pep talk. Listen, the proper technique is going to Progressive.com so you can see Progressive's direct rate with our competitors' rates, even if we're not the lowest, like we practiced. And remember, no matter what happens, the important thing is to try and save some money out there.
Thanks, Coach.
Man, I love this job.
Compare rates and save at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations.
It gets real, it's live, it's really live, local and in motion. Every day on Kcaa, the Inland Empire's only live local motion talk. Kcaa 1050 AM and kcaaradio.com.
Well, good afternoon, 3:02. Looking at your weather today, highs near 90. We are at that right now. Very warm outside. Overnight lows dropping down to about 57. For tomorrow, your highs looking at about 80, or rather 92. A little bit of cloudiness out there, but mostly sunny. And looking at your drive, the Cajon Pass, there is some construction going on the roadways. As you know, northbound side, beginning at 138, that right lane is closed. So be careful as you make your way through there. Other than that, nothing else reported. Have a great afternoon and enjoy your drive. That is the latest on KCAA 1050, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Like to spend a few days in another world? Then write this down. Golden Bear Cottages, Big Bear Lake. Now, listen, this is not some corporate-owned operation. It's family-owned and operated by some real nice people. Unique? Oh, you bet. Golden Bear Cottages features 28 one-of-a-kind cabins on a 5-acre historic site. Great for families, couples, and groups. And cabins are available with 1 to 7 bedrooms. Golden Bear Cottages is just a stone's throw from Big Bear Lake and super close to 3 great ski areas. Now, I could go on all day about Golden Bear Cottages in Big Bear, but to see everything, just go to goldenbear.net. Again, goldenbear.net. Golden Bear Cottages in Big Bear. Clean, comfortable, and affordable. Check them out. goldenbear.net.
Don't miss A1 Palazzo talk about San Bernardino every Tuesday at 4 p.m. It's live, local, and right down the block on KCAA 1050 AM.
This is KCAA.
It's only natural to want to get out more than you put in. Synetis naturally enhances the uptake and efficient use of essential nutrients and water in your almond orchard or grape vineyard, improving resilience while getting you higher yields and enhanced quality. Synetis strengthens almond trees or grapevines' metabolic process, along with your bottom line. Get more. Get Synetis. Synetis by Gomar. Available from your local Simplot Grower Solutions retailers.
Are you in charge of keeping people safe from lightning and severe weather? Visit weatherbug.safety.com today. Safety professionals everywhere are turning to WeatherBug for the most advanced monitoring and alerting. Why? Only WeatherBug offers real-time lightning and severe weather alerts. Minutes matter when danger is near. Get WeatherBug safety solutions to keep your organization safer from bad weather. Visit weatherbug.safety.com today. Download the WeatherBug app and know before.
KCAA Loma Linda, your CNBC news station for the Inland Empire.
Welcome to Relationships 2.0. I'm Michelle Skeen. My special guest today is Alex Korb. He is the author of The Upward Spiral, Using Neuroscience to Reverse the Course of Depression, One Small Change at a Time. Welcome, Alex. Can you hear me? Oh, I think we must be having a connection problem. Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Alex.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Surprise!
We're talking.
I could hear you just fine. I guess the station had me on mute.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't work.
No.
I definitely want you to speak. Well, I already had the opportunity to tell you, but I want to say it for the audience. I absolutely love your book. And I actually feel like I was sitting here as I was reviewing all of my highlighting in your book, which is significant. I was trying to come up with the name of at least one person, family, friend, or client who I would not recommend this book to, and I couldn't think of one person. And it's not because I'm surrounded by people who are depressed. It's because it's such a great book to bring awareness to that brings awareness to just the way our minds work and the way our brains work and how we can make these changes, even if, you know, I consider myself to be a positive, kind of optimistic person. Not that I can't get in that downward spiral that you speak of, but it's so nice to have those tools to know how we can get ourselves out of that place. So great job. Thank you so much. I just think this is a great contribution to, self-help literature and depression literature and anxiety literature. So,
yeah. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. When I was writing the book, I think the publisher was really trying to narrow the focus because I guess, on their part, it's easier for marketing if they can say, oh, no, we just want it for, depressed people, whatever. And
right.
And I did want to help, people with depression, but I think, I also wanted to understand to help the many people, who know someone who's depressed to just want to get a better understanding. But on top of that, like, the thing that the publisher didn't really understand that I kept trying to explain to them that I'm glad you got is that the brain circuits that contribute to depression are the same ones, that control decision-making and habits and focus and happiness. Yeah. And, these are sort of universal human traits. And so really anyone who's interested in those things, can benefit from.
Which means anyone with a brain.
Right.
I mean, really.
Anyone who has a brain and wants to understand it and know how to use it better.
And I love you do use all of these, brain words and stuff, but it's also, I told you earlier, you just have such a great writing voice. It feels very, I don't know, I just feel like you really meet your audience where, you're acknowledging that they're smart, but also you're connecting to their emotional part as well. And so it's just a great mix. Plus, I always really love when the writer, because we know we're always inspired to write books because we're attached to topics because they resonate with us. And for you to discuss your own struggle with periods of depression and anxiety and worry, and than telling stories about your downward spirals or that whole domino effect of what happens in like normal real life situations is fabulous.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think one of the problems, with depression is this stigma against it. And I think people need to understand, one, how common it is. That, I think 1 in 6 people will suffer from depression in their lifetime. But even just in a given year, probably, that percentage will suffer from some form of depression or anxiety disorder or some related disorder, and those underlying circuitries are, all related. I did have to use a lot of brain words because I did want to be accurate in sort of describing what's happening in the brain, and that was one of the reasons that sort of pushed me to write the book, is that I felt like there was so much out there about depression or happiness or whatever that ignored what was actually happening in the brain, and the books that discussed what's happening in their brain were such at a deep technical level where it's just written for scientists or clinicians that made it too complex. And when you're trying to explain a complex system, if you explain it in a complex way, you can make it sound even more complex. But I like to go by the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman's piece of advice, which is that if you can't explain something to your grandmother, then you don't really understand it yourself. So I guess a lot of the book I was confused about, and part of it was the topics I wasn't fully clear on, and I did a lot of research, reading a whole bunch of different articles on a particular aspect of the book until I was satisfied that I understood it well enough.
Right.
Because I do research on depression and anxiety, but there's so many aspects and so many different brain regions that on each of these little nuanced points, I wanted to make sure that I understood it well enough so that I could then clarify it and help the reader understand and lead them through it.
Yeah, and you do. One of the things that I really love about the book, I think, you touched on it earlier, that a lot of people who aren't depressed kind of get tired of depressed people. It's like, okay, come on, snap out of it. So, part of this is really great. It's great for the depressed person, as you said. It's also great for people who know depressed people. But there's this other piece that's really important. I think that this book should be very empowering for people who suffer from anxiety and depression, because here are these things that they can do that will help them. And, you even start off in the beginning of the book talking about your own period of depression and how you didn't realize you were depressed. And then you go on to say that you were inadvertently preventing your brain from sinking down deeper because you were involved in a lot of activities that were really helpful. And I think that it's really important for people to feel or to understand, instead of just someone saying, oh, come on, just get out and get some exercise, or come on, you just need to get out and be with people. But to explain that this advice is based upon some real science.
Yeah. And I think, understanding what you can do is really an important aspect of the solution, because in depression, people feel so powerless. And so just understanding that there are some things that you can do that would help, that's a step in the right direction. But on top of that, I also wanted people to understand that there are certain things that you can't change. There are certain aspects of yourself that are just, who you are.
that are fixed.
Yeah, and my editor, when I was writing the book, she kept wanting to, like, you know, take the focus off that, or, you know, say, do we really need to have, you know, those parts in there? They're just explaining a lot of the background neuroscience. Because I think in her mind, she was like, well, it's a self-help book. Like, tell people what to do. Tell them, you know, do this, do that, do this.
Right.
But I think understanding and acceptance are one of the most powerful ways to alleviate suffering, because you realize that, oh, there are certain parts of my brain that are just, that's how the brain was designed to work, and that's how it works in everybody. You know, I can't change that. You know, when I'm feeling a little bit anxious, or when I just keep noticing the negative, you know, in my life, those are just, you know, different brain regions that are doing exactly what they were designed to do.
Right. Right. They're working.
Maybe. Right. Exactly. They're working. People always want to know what's wrong with my brain. It's not like there's anything wrong with your brain. It's just maybe in that circuit, the tuning is turned up a little higher in you. And there are certain some aspects of that you can't necessarily change. Mm-hmm. But once you realize, like, oh, there's certain things that I can't change, then that sort of frees you up to focus on the things that you can change.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Well, I'm so happy you fought for all of this stuff. You know, New Harbinger's my publishing company too. And yeah, you have to, if you feel really passionate about something, you have to push back there. I'm glad you did. So, you know, I always feel like if you don't identify the source of your suffering, you can't make any movement toward alleviating the suffering. So there's a lot of great information in your book, and an explanation for the whys, and then the hows to make the changes. And we have to go to a short break, but I have so much stuff I want to talk about. So I don't know if I should let you lead the way, or if you want me to. I really want to talk about the brain bias and the negativity bias, and how some people have more of a negativity bias, and get into the habits and all of that, because that's really interesting too. And your story about Billy, I love that. But anyway, a lot to talk about. Alex, take a deep breath, because we know deep breathing helps, right?
Yes. Has a lot of
and we'll take a short break, and we'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Relationships 2.0. My special guest is Alex Korb, PhD. He is the author of the new book, The Upward Spiral, Using Neuroscience to Reverse the Course of Depression, One Small Change at a Time. Go buy this book immediately on Amazon, and we'll be right back to chat with him some more. Stay tuned. Do you tend to overreact and let your emotions rule your interactions with others? Do you become defensive or find it difficult to see things from another's point of view? Hi, I'm Michelle Skeen. You're not alone. Despite the fact that we all have to deal with people in our daily lives, many of us have difficulties with interpersonal relationships. My suggestion? Pick up a copy of the Interpersonal Problems Workbook. This book combines powerful evidence-based techniques for strengthening relationships in all areas of your life, whether it's at home or work, with a significant other, a parent, or your child. To find out more about the Interpersonal Problems Workbook, go to my website, www.michelleskeen.com. Again, www.michelleskeen.com. Pick up a copy and improve your relationships.
There are kids in this country who didn't have a parent at their baseball games or recitals because their parents were serving in faraway places. But now they're coming home, and Wounded Warrior Project assists them through the Warriors to Work program.
My mom used to be a tank programmer. Now she works with computers. I'm really glad she's home because I can't eat my dad's marshmallow macaroni anymore.
To support the Warriors to Work program, contact Wounded Warrior Project at findwwp.org. Welcome home the brave.
When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, both of my daughters were pregnant, and everything I was looking forward to turned into everything I was going to miss. First words, first steps. Today, those babies are 3. I'm with them all the time. I don't know what's next, but I know I'm here today.
A Susan G. Komen grant helped pay for Alanthia's surgery, and today she's caring for her grandchildren. Help save lives. Visit IamSusanGKomen.org. A public service message from Susan G. Komen.
Welcome back to Relationships 2.0. I'm chatting with Alex Korb, the author of The Upward Spiral. Alex, one of the things that I loved about your book, you give these really vivid examples. I'd love for you, and it's always really helpful for listeners to be able to, connect with someone else's story. I love your in your chapter Trapped with Anxiety and Worry, when you talk about having friends over for a dinner party and that whole downward spiral that you got into. Can you take our listeners through that and explain how that plays into all of this?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I think it's a good story because it's such a silly example of something to overreact to. But I think, that's one of the things that we all sort of get into. We don't choose what triggers our anxiety or what we worry about. It just sort of happens. So I just moved into a new apartment, and I was inviting some new friends over, some people who had just moved to town. I'd met them once, and I was excited to make some new friends. So, I was really excited about the evening, and I was, going to make some tilapia, just add a little butter, a little lemon, simple dish. And I was, going through all the steps of, okay, what I need to plan to get everything ready on time. They're, coming over at 7. Okay, well, I need to make rice, and I need to start the vegetables, and I was just planning, all the steps out. And that's utilizing certain prefrontal brain regions that that does that sort of thing. It plans out how to react to the environment and make decisions and everything. That was going great. And then I realized, I looked around my apartment and I realized I was a little messy. There was stuff on the coffee table, and I was like, oh shoot, I gotta clean that up. And I was like, okay, well, no problem. I'll just I'll clean first, and then I'll start the rice, and just one other extra little thing to stick in there in that planning, and I was able to do that. And then I was like, oh wait, then I have to take a shower, and then what if they come over and I still haven't taken a shower? Then they'll think I'm dirty, and but should I take a shower first, or should I clean up first, or maybe I'll get dirty cleaning up? And then this started to spiral out of control, and I sort of started cooking the rice. Then I was worrying, but I need to start chopping the vegetables, and so I sort of got stuck for a few minutes, worrying about what I should do next. I didn't really do anything, and then in all of my even through all this, I got it only took me 20 minutes longer than I would have without worrying about it. But in all of my haste running around, I didn't see their text message that said they were going to be 20 minutes late anyway. And so that just sort of highlights how we can sort of let silly things sort of spiral out of control because we attach all this meaning to them, and then there's all this anxiety about it, and then that anxiety and worrying about all these things that we can't control, or maybe that we can't do stuff about, keeps us from actually enjoying living our lives, realizing it's fun to invite people over. Instead, we focus on the potential negative judgment or things that are out of our control, and then it also keeps us from doing the things that we can control because we're worried about all these things that are out of our control.
Right. And one of the things you talk about is that you didn't mention in your story, but you might have also incorporated worrying that you were going to make a mistake that you had made previously. Maybe if you had, burned the rice before or something like that, that often, it's that there's a lot of worrying that's going on about based on past events and not staying in the moment and the now. Is that accurate for me to say that?
I mean, and for me, like, I'm often late. Like, I leave things to the last minute because I assume, it'll just be easy to just cook dinner for everything. And so I don't plan ahead. And so everything's fine until, like, there's one little stumble. And then I can compound that by saying, I do this every time. I always forget to, leave enough time to do everything. And then I get upset with myself. And, there's really two things to say about that. One is the planning that I was doing utilizes the same brain circuitry as worrying about it. It's just that planning is connected to youthful action, and the worrying tends to just be connected to deeper emotional regions that don't really solve anything. And then on top of that, the other thing related to what you just said about things you had done before are habits. And one of the most deeply ingrained, difficult kinds of habits to get over are emotional habits. Like, a habit is just something, there's a stimulus and you have a response. And, it's easy to think of stimulus and responses in terms of things you do. Like, you walk into a dark room, so you turn and flip the light switch. You sit down in your car seat, so you put on the seat belt. That's how you usually think of habits. But they're also emotional habits. There's some trigger, like, we start to worry about something, or we get upset by something, and then these habit circuits, these emotional habit circuits in our brain start to take over and take us on this whole emotional journey just because that's what they're, used to doing.
Right. So you're busy, you're predicting what's going to happen based upon past experiences. And so you're having the same kind of emotional reactions, thoughts, and sensations that you had when it happened before.
Yeah. And like
that you've created because it didn't happen that way yet, right?
Right. And I mean, that's important because, like, that's one of the ways our brain helps us navigate the world, is that it tries to simplify things and, use our past experiences to help guide our future decisions. And that's a very important aspect of our brain function. And, most of the time it works perfectly fine. It's just that
it's why every day isn't Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also it's like, it's not every day is Groundhog Day, but it's also, it would be problematic if every day was like completely new. You just woke up in a completely different place and, the people you were around you were completely different. Like, we need to rely on habits, most of the time that just helps us get through the day and feel comfortable. But occasionally those habits are a bit maladaptive, and we just need to recognize, like, I could just change this situation by changing, how I'm framing it, or even simpler things like, for example, biofeedback, which sounds complex but is actually very simple. Before the break, you had mentioned, take a deep breath because we're going to learn a lot.
Right.
And taking a deep breath is actually a great example of biofeedback, because one of the things that happens, like, when you start to get a little worried and anxious, is your breathing, speeds up.
Becomes shallow.
And becomes shallow, right. And we tend to think that emotion is a one-way street, that we have an emotion and then it gets expressed in our body, like, we're happy, then we smile, or we're angry, and then we get tense. But it's actually a two-way street, and that's why it's called biofeedback, that if your body is behaving in a certain way, that actually makes your brain think, I must be feeling that emotion. And so if you just start, breathing faster and your muscles get a little bit more tense, then your brain starts to think, oh, I must be anxious or nervous or worried about something. And then you start feeling more anxious and nervous and worried, and then you start acting more anxious and nervous and worried, and it compounds the problem.
Right.
So one of the things that's really useful about understanding biofeedback is it's much harder to control your thoughts, but it's much easier to control your actions. And
yes,
your actions
you can control behavior.
Right. Your actions will help then control your thoughts. And so if you just notice yourself getting a little anxious and stressed, then just take a deep breath in and let it out slowly, and that sends a signal to your brain that, oh, I guess I'm a little calmer than I thought, or things are a little bit under control. Or other examples are, just like relaxing your muscles. Sometimes we like clench our jaw, or like clench our butt muscles or whatever, like just all our core muscles. You just relax those muscles. And that sends, more calming signals to the brain. And there's a whole bunch of other examples, but that's the basic idea.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. The other thing that I really thought was helpful is that you make this distinction between worrying and anxiety. And I really liked that. And I feel silly that I didn't know that. I mean, I'm a psychologist, but not like I know everything, but
well, I didn't know it either really until I looked in depth into it.
Yeah, but so worrying is thinking about a potential problem, and anxiety is feeling it. Say more about that, because I think that's again, this kind of awareness for people who are having this experience, to me, is so helpful. I think can be really enlightening, even just labeling things correctly, right?
Yeah. Labeling things correctly really helps, compartmentalize and realize, like, oh, that's this problem, not that problem. And then that gives you more, sense of control over that problem. So you said it just right as I would say.
It was out of your book, so that's why it sounded like
there you go. Worrying is utilizing the planning circuitry in the brain that I had talked about before. Like, so when I was planning all the steps for dinner, that's using a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. And that just sort of, is like what you utilize in chess. You like think, oh, I could move here. Oh, but then why wouldn't I wouldn't want to move there because then he could take my pawn. Okay, so I could move there, and these set of consequences could happen, and we can sort of play out how the future will be before we actually live it. And that's one of the, most important aspects of being human. That's what allows us to, do so many great things, because we can sort of project ourselves into the future. But when that that brain region talks to another part of the prefrontal cortex that's more involved in emotional prediction and emotional control, they can sort of get caught in a loop, because the planning part is saying, oh, well, this could happen, and the more emotional part of the prefrontal cortex thinking, oh, but we wouldn't be happy with that, so we can't do that. And then we're like, okay, we could do this, but I guess I'm speaking of the brain as if it's Gollum and from Lord of the Rings, but like it really is this set of different structures that are all talking to each other. And worrying is just, you get your prefrontal cortex gets caught in this loop of it sees, all these potential problems, and it's thinking that, oh, I can't go down this path because that would be a problem. I can't go down this path. And it just sort of is viewing all of the negative things. Now that's not problematic necessarily in of itself, because it may waste time, but it does. There's nothing really that different between worrying and planning. It's just how closely associated it is with action.
Right. So you have this box in the book, which I double highlighted, so it must be important. Go for good enough. So
Right. Yeah,
if all
which
of
means
your
you tend to
worrying
worry
is
more.
getting you stuck because there isn't like the perfect solution and you're not acting on anything.
Right. And like, yeah, so for example, you know, just in the dinner example, like tilapia, like that was just, I could have thought, well, what would be the perfect fish to make? Should I make tilapia, tuna, mahi, whatever? Like, and, you know, if it's worrying when you sort of get stuck, you know, about thinking about all of the negative consequences. But once you sort of, well, I don't know what the best fish is. Like, there's no best fish. Like, just you know, pick one, and then you can move on with your life. And that's, you know, that's sort of what worrying is. Anxiety is a much more deeper feeling, and it's sensations that we have, and those are controlled by a much deeper, more ancient part of the brain called the limbic system.
The amygdala? No.
And specifically, the amygdala is the main part of the limbic system that, you know, mediates anxiety. And that's like, you know, when you're walking down a dark alley at night, you just get a sinking feeling in your stomach, or, you know, you don't necessarily have conscious thoughts about it, but maybe, you know, you did something, you know, you bought something, you know, your wife isn't going to be happy with, and you sort of have this nervous feeling that you don't want to tell her about it, and just a lot of times we're not even aware that we're feeling anxiety, but you know, those are, we feel it in our chest, or you feel it in your stomach, or just like in your muscle tension, and it's much more visceral. And it's the same feeling as like what you feel, you know, as fear. But often, you know, fear is in response to something that's a clear and present danger right there, like someone is attacking you, or what, you feel fear. But anxiety is a response that you get, that same response to potential danger. So, you know, the danger isn't necessarily actually happening. It could happen in the future. And the real problem is, I think I say in the book that, like, you know, walking through a field of grass, you know, you see a rustle, and anxiety is that feeling you get, oh my God, it might be a lion. And, you know, it's sort of related to the feeling that if you actually saw a lion, but there's a lot more that can cause anxiety that is not dangerous to us. And that's actually related to a part of the brain that's just, you know, its job is to try and keep us safe. So sometimes it's a little overactive. It gets a little too cautious. But the real problem is, you know, comes in the relationship between worry and anxiety. Because sometimes, you know, there's nothing wrong with worrying. As I said, it's just sort of thinking more deeply about a problem, or sometimes it just, you know, makes us procrastinate because it makes us too long to take a decision. But sometimes worrying can trigger anxiety. Like, we have a thought and we start going down this rabbit hole, and then it triggers our anxiety, and that makes us, you know, worry more, and it gives us, you know, more feelings of dread, and ruins our mood, and makes it harder to do other things.
You know, it's so funny. I had someone today was asking me about my kids, and my two sons are both graduating from college in a couple of weeks, and one week apart. Their graduations are 1 week apart. And she said, what would you have done if it was on the same day? And she's a worrier. And I looked at her and smiled, and I said, I don't have to worry about that. So I hadn't even thought of it, right? Like, why would I worry about that? It's not something to worry about because it didn't happen. But I can see where people who are anxious and who worry a lot would even focus on something that's an as if, you know, or that's a what if. What if that had happened?
Right. And you
rather than the reality being, well, it didn't happen, so I can instead order the ice cream cake for, you know what I mean? Instead of where I can focus my energies and take action on something that is that needs action taken on it, right?
Right. And that's important to recognize, like, in yourself, though, what
Yeah,
type
that's
of
what.
things
Yeah,
your brain
hold
is drawn
that thought for just 1 second. We're taking. I don't know if you can hear that theme music, but we're going to take a real short break, and we'll be right back. Hold that
Playing
thought,
off
Alex. We're going to go to commercial. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. You're listening to Relationships 2.0.
Hey, what's up? Thinking about you. XOXOXO. Want to snuggle. ... JK. Hit me back. You getting these texts? ? We should hang later. I miss you. Holla at ya, boy. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back. Are you at home? Where are you? What are you doing? OMG. You are making me mad. Are you with your ex? You better text me back. I'm waiting outside your house.
Relentless, aggressive texting is like sending an angry robot to deliver your message. When does the robot become dangerous? Let us know at that'snotcool.com.
That'snotcool.com.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
America's wounded warriors are coming home. After serving on foreign shores, these brave men and women are returning to their families and communities. Many have wounds you can see, and many have wounds you can't see, like post-traumatic stress disorder. Now that these warriors are back home, they are ready to enter the civilian workforce. To help, Wounded Warrior Project has developed the Warriors to Work program, a career counseling service that helps warriors translate their military experience to the civilian workplace. These extraordinary men and women bring proven world-class job skills and a unique perspective on teamwork to the job. And to ensure the right warrior finds the right job, Wounded Warrior Project works with employers to find just the right match. When you hire a wounded warrior, you hire an intelligent, talented, and committed new employee. Contact Wounded Warrior Project at findwwp.org. Welcome home the brave.
Hi, I'm Michelle Skeen, psychologist, author, and host of Relationships 2.0. On my radio show, I interview guests who present their unique perspectives and expertise on topics that cover all aspects of relationship. If you want to improve your relationship, and let's face it, we all have room for improvement, tune in to Relationships 2.0 with Dr. Michelle Skeen. If you miss my show or you're interested in listening to past podcasts, you can go to my website, www.michelleskeen.com. Again, www.michelleskeen.com. Tune in and improve your relationships. Welcome back to Relationships 2.0. I'm chatting with Alex Korb, PhD, author of The Upward Spiral. Alex, how can people find you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, it's alexkorbphd.com. That's Korb with a K.
Great. So you were getting ready to talk about how it's important to recognize what, like if you fall into this worry trap.
Right.
Or maybe that's what you were going to say.
Yes. No, I mean, I pointed out that, the distinction between anxiety and worry, and that worry is, thinking about a potential problem, and anxiety is feeling it. And, by feeling it, I mean, your stomach squirming or your heart racing, or your breath coming fast and short. And a lot of times we could be feeling those things but not be conscious of them. And, so that's also an important distinction, too, that we can have anxiety but not necessarily be aware of it. And so when I was talking about worrying, there's nothing necessarily inherently bad about worrying, but sometimes worrying can trigger anxiety, and then the anxiety gives us, more to worry about, and that creates what I call the downward spiral.
Right.
That's why I called my book The Upward Spiral, because there's ways to combat that. Now,
and so let's
as I
talk.
said-
Let's talk about some of those, and then about how to create that upward spiral. And then before we run out of time, I have to discuss habits with you because that chapter really resonated with me. But so what are the ways that people, well, the other thing I want to say quickly about worry, you're saying that, worry on its, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up one thing about the anxiety worry puzzle is a lot of times, so anxiety can actually also be this trigger that causes us to worry, and that we worry as a coping mechanism to deal with an underlying anxiety. So sometimes we often, we experience someone like your friend who was worrying about, like, what if they were graduating the same day? And we often want to say to such people, like, oh, don't worry, stop worrying about that. Like, don't worry about all those things. But in fact, their worrying is just an activation of this prefrontal cortex as a response to try and cope with this underlying anxiety that they already feel. So, if the worrying comes first, and it's triggering your anxiety, great, stop worrying. But if it's the anxiety that's coming first, stopping the worrying isn't going to solve the problem. And what people need to have is have a little self-awareness and understanding that they are actually feeling anxiety. Because when we have unconscious anxiety, it sort of ruins our lives without us knowing it. But having a little bit of introspection and recognizing the emotions that you're actually feeling, that actually reduces the negative impact of those emotions. There's a great study called Putting Feelings into Words.
Yes. I highlighted that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That they put people in an MRI scanner and showed them various facial expressions to, induce emotions into them. And obviously it activates this, a lot of limbic regions that are responsible for emotions. But when they had the subject name the emotion that they were seeing or name the emotion that they were feeling, it actually reduced the emotional impact of those emotions because it activated these prefrontal regions that are responsible for emotional control. So when you are having anxiety, the first step towards the solution is to become aware of the anxiety that you're feeling. Notice, oh, my heart seems to be racing. I have this overwhelming sense of dread that something bad is going to happen. My breathing is shallow, and that awareness is the first step. And then beyond that, well, then you can do some biofeedback steps, or you can take some strategies to change your thinking about the situation or whatever. But the first step is awareness.
Yeah, always. Always, right?
Yeah.
So I was going to say, like, maybe one of the things that isn't good about worrying, because you're saying worrying isn't as much of a problem, it's just that it can be a way of kind of procrastinating or preventing action, right?
Yes. Yeah, it just gets in the way of you living your life fully.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is, you said you wanted to talk about habit.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Can just be one of those habits that your brain gets trapped into. Maybe you have a habit of procrastination that every time you have, a big deadline at work or a test or whatever, some big project.
Or a batch deadline for a book.
Right. That you feel a sense of anxiety, and so we have habits, we have coping habits to deal with our anxieties. Now the problem is that the coping habit is designed to just get the anxiety somewhat under control. It doesn't exist to necessarily solve the problem.
Okay.
And a lot of times when, people are going through a rough time, it just means that your coping habits are non-optimal. They exist to sort of help deal with the anxiety, but they're not actually eliminating the thing that's causing your anxiety. And worrying is a great example of that. because worrying,
like a short-term strategy
solution, right? Because the part of the brain that controls habits, it doesn't really differentiate between good habits and bad habits. It doesn't concern itself with the future. It's just sort of concerning itself with here and now. Here's a problem. I'm feeling this anxiety. I got to deal with it. Well, that seemed to be a good Band-Aid. And that's how that deep reptilian, part of the brain works. Whereas the prefrontal cortex is really the only part of the brain responsible for the future. So that's actually why anxiety often triggers worrying, because worrying uses these prefrontal circuits, and that sort of gives us some semblance of control, or at least distracts us enough so that we don't, feel the anxiety, which is what really bothers us. But the problem is it doesn't actually help us in the long term. And these are the same, these sorts of coping mechanisms are the same thing. They lead to procrastination, but that also leads to, alcoholism and,
right.
Drug abuse, because, there are we can do little things, take these drugs that'll make it, the problem or the pain not so apparent or go away for at least a little bit.
It'll mask it, right?
Right. And then the habit part of the brain sort of realizes, like, oh, that's the way we do things. It sort of solves it for the time being, but we end up in bigger problems down the road because changing habits then becomes a much more difficult thing to do.
Well, and you give this example in the book that was I just found it so shocking, but it makes so much sense, and it made me realize why. So my drug of choice, like my bad habit, is sugar, specifically candy.
Mine too. Yeah.
And I mean, I have this is an issue, and I'm reading this part of your book, and, like, I don't keep it in the house because if it's here, I'll eat it.
Right.
I have so much.
I would like to say if I have, a bag of cookies in the house today, then tomorrow I will have no cookies.
Right. And I have to say, I have a lot of discipline and self-control. I mean, I exercise, there are so many ways in which I'm so healthy, and I have this one, really bad habit, and it feels like, I can't, like, I need to totally give it up. But can you please take the listeners through this example that you give of what happened, that whole Snickers candy bar thing? Just really hit home with me. Now it makes so much sense.
Yeah. So there's basically in this deeper habit part of the brain that's called the striatum. It's deeper and more ancient even than the emotional limbic system. There's two parts. And one is just responsible for immediate pleasure. And the other, and that's called the nucleus accumbens. And the other, which is the dorsal striatum, is responsible for just doing things that we've done before. And both of them really rely on this neurotransmitter called dopamine. And when dopamine gets released in the nucleus accumbens, it's really pleasurable. And so it drives our behavior to want to do that again. And so dopamine gets released for, all sorts of pleasurable things like, sex and, eating chocolate and, all these good stuff in life it's rewarding because dopamine gets released there. So what happens is since our brain, likes that feeling, it tries to predict, like, okay, how can we get that again?
Right.
And that's what drives your behavior. So, maybe the first time you see a Snickers bar, it doesn't necessarily have any inherent value other than maybe it seems like a lot of other people want it. So you're like, oh, you're sort of interested. And then you eat it and you're like, oh, my God, this is delicious. And that releases a lot of dopamine. Now your brain, because it experienced that dopamine, it tries to predict, like, oh, how could I get that again? And so now when it sees the Snickers bar, it sort of anticipates, oh, I could eat that and get that, dopamine rush. And even just seeing that now starts to release dopamine in the nucleus accumbens, which is pleasurable. But that dopamine also then starts driving our actions so that we do complete the task to then get the rest of that dopamine. So we see the Snickers bar, and then we sort of, we grab it, and then we want to eat it. And then, the prediction of that sort of moves backwards in time. Like now when I just walk into the store,
right.
Now I sort of release dopamine, and then that makes me go find the Snickers bar, and then I eat it. And then, next, as time goes on, now when I just whenever
driving
I get gas,
by
I'm
the store.
Like, right. I'm like, oh, I walk into the store and get, and that dopamine is sort of driving our behaviors so we can lead to this ultimate reward. But the real problem is that the more we do an action, the stronger it gets encoded in the dorsal striatum, which is, it doesn't care about pleasure at all. It's just like whenever we do something, the more you do it, the stronger it gets encoded. And that's why, like, you never forget how to ride a bicycle.
Okay. So I'll never forget how to eat candy. Give me some advice, Alex. What, Dr. Korb? I'm your patient for 2 minutes. So what should I do? Should I just give up sugar, period?
Well, there's a few things. One is to recognize what your triggers are. And because it's much easier to avoid temptation than resist it.
Yeah, so, I love that in your book. So true.
Your initial, action is like, well, don't keep cookies in the house. Because, like, when you don't keep cookies around, you're not missing them as much.
Yeah.
I remember, like, in college when I first started, like, shopping for myself, I, like, just would walk down every aisle of the supermarket, and my girlfriend at the time was like, what? Like, don't go down the aisle. There's nothing... That's just cookies and junk food. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, oh yeah, like
that's all chips and candy. Yeah.
Right. Like if you don't walk down that aisle, then you're not going to see it and be tempted.
Yeah.
So if you can eliminate those triggers from your life, then great, avoid them. Also, practicing some self-compassion is helpful. And the reason is because when we're stressed out, that actually triggers the habit part of the brain more. So, we might feel an urge to do a habit, and then we get upset with ourselves for having that urge, and that increases our stress levels, which further, makes that urge harder to resist, and we get more upset, and that stress over time just becomes harder to resist because it's not being controlled by like something that we want or want consciously anyway. It's not being controlled by our long-term goals. It's just this like deeper part of the brain that's driving us towards it. So
yeah, that's so interesting.
Having a bit of
self-compassion
can help reduce that stress. And then the last thing really is along those lines is that the only way to change habits is to have sort of an intervention by the prefrontal cortex, because the nucleus accumbens chooses
pleasure.
Chooses our actions based on what's immediately pleasurable. The dorsal striatum chooses our actions based on what we've done before.
Okay.
And the prefrontal cortex is the only thing that can be responsible for deciding what we want to do, and they all have an argument.
Planning.
Alex,
it was such a treat to have you on. We're out of time, and everyone needs to buy this book, The Upward Spiral. Thank you for helping me with my sugar addiction. And continued success with your book.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM. The station that leaves no listener behind.
I'm Chris Maurer, CNBC Business Radio. Stocks are higher. The Dow's up 69 points, the Nasdaq higher by 12. Shares of Apple are up fractionally late Monday. The tech giant reporting earnings and revenue that easily topped Wall Street forecasts. Apple also raising its dividend and its share repurchasing program. United Parcel Service reporting mixed earnings results. The package delivery company posted better than expected profit, but revenue missed expectations. Ford sold fewer cars and trucks in North America, resulting in a profit that was less than analysts expected. And Pfizer turning in quarterly results that topped forecasts, but the pharmaceutical giant cutting its full-year outlook. Americans aren't feeling as upbeat about the economy this month. That's mainly because hiring has slowed. And home prices rose in February from a year earlier. Once again, stocks are higher. The Dow's up 71 points. Chris Maurer, CNBC Business Radio.
Have you had trouble with online dating? This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. We've created a new solution, EH+. EH Plus combines the personal attention of a matchmaker with eHarmony's extensive pool of great singles. EH Plus gives you hand-selected matches and freedom from being online. Get started today. Call 855-930-LOVE. That's 855-930-LOVE.
Hey, it's Flo, and this is my impression of a coach giving the ultimate pep talk. Listen, the proper technique is going to Progressive.com so you can see Progressive's direct rate with our competitors' rates, even if we're not the lowest, like we practiced. And remember, no matter what happens, the important thing is to try and save some money out there.
Thanks, Coach.
Man, I love this job.
Compare rates and save at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations.
It gets real, it's live, it's really live, local and in motion. Every day on KCAA, the Inland Empire's only live local motion talk. KCAA 1050 AM and KCAAradio.com.
It's a couple minutes after the hour. I'm Di Rice with the latest in local news on KCAA 1050 AM. A late-night shooting killed a 32-year-old Rancho Cucamonga man near Fontana on Sunday. The victim, Guy Estrada, was found shortly after 10:30 near Valley Boulevard and Redwood Avenue. Deputies had been dispatched to the area to investigate a report of an injured man. Anyone with information regarding the killing is encouraged to call 909-387-3589. And a 50-year-old Hesperia woman was found dead beside a roadway in the high desert city of Hesperia. The woman has been identified as Herminia Corona. She was found near Cottonwood Avenue and Poplar Street in Oak Hills. Investigators believe Corona may have died as a result of exiting the vehicle while it traveled south on Cottonwood Avenue. Detectives are conducting what is described as a death investigation. Inland Empire weather. Mostly sunny tomorrow, a couple degrees warmer, 92 the high, 53 the low. Currently, it's about 86 degrees in San Bernardino, and that's the latest in news and weather. I'm Di Rice on KCAA.
This traffic and weather report is brought to you by Unbound. Child sponsorship the way it's supposed to be. Real kids, real results, real easy for you to help. Join the fight against global poverty at unbound.org.
Do you have a broken window or rock chip on your vehicle that needs repair? Give us a call at HM Auto Glass, 951-858-5190. HM Auto Glass is your locally owned and operated auto glass specialist, offering low cost and high quality auto glass repair and replacement. We also work with all major insurance companies and offer free mobile service. So call us, 951-858-5190. That number again is 951-858-5190.
He doesn't mess around. And he doesn't take sides. And he looks good doing it. It's the all-new Jason Stapleton program at jasonstapleton.com every weekday at 5 p.m. right here on KCAA 1050 AM. KCAA, where every day is a great day. KCAA, Loma Linda.
listeners. This is the Al Palazzo Show. I have a real treat today. I have two guests. I'm a big advocate of volunteerism and organizations in the community that make a difference, and my guests represent this. My first guest for the first half of the hour will be Kcaa-Al Garcia. I'll just say a few things about her, and then I'm going to let her take it over. Kcaa-Al is a legend. I mean, she really is. As a young woman, she was an intern with Dolores Huerta, who was at the side of Cesar Chavez. Kcaa-Al has worked with the Home and Neighborly Service. She's the current president of the Chicano Latino Caucus, and she's a field rep for our Assemblywoman, Cheryl Brown. So Kcaa-Al has been involved in the community for many years. So Kcaa-Al, what would you like to talk about today and share with our listeners?
First of all, thank you very much, Al, for having me here. I would like to talk about the importance of volunteerism. Volunteerism is something that a person gives willingly to their community, and always stepping up to see if there's any way that they can help. And the way that our economy is today, volunteers are extra special in our communities. I have served on many boards. As a volunteer in the city of Rialto, I first came to Rialto in 1973 as a young mother with young children. And one of the things that I received was the coaches volunteering to pick up my children and take them to practice and give them something to do until I was able to go pick them up, which is an hour later after the practice had started. So there I was very happy that the program was there, and it helped me to understand why volunteering is important, because these folks that are out there, whether they're coaches, whatever capacity they are, they're giving their time. Even in clubs and organizations that I belong to, that we volunteer. We step up to the plate. It isn't that, I don't think it's because we have a big ego, is that when you volunteer is because you see there's a need. Politically, I have volunteered in many campaigns. I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people that now are holding office. And my mother used to say, and I will quote her, that don't wait for somebody to ask you, can you help? You see the need, you step up and volunteer. And it's always good because if you don't get out there in your community, I always say, well, then you shouldn't complain. If you see things that can be fixed, or you don't have to be a rocket scientist, you don't have to be a highly educated. Only thing that requires for a volunteer is to care about your surroundings and about your community. Well, long story short, I guess somebody was looking at me and my volunteerism and how active I was in my community, and that is why I have one of the reasons why that I am in the job that I am today, because I do care, and I have proven that that volunteering is just who I am. And I would like to encourage folks that look around you and see what is needed and how can you help. And people think, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. But there's always, we were given gifts, and we should share those gifts with our communities, because we should be very active, because that way you give back to what is given to you. And also, I want to share with you some of the committees that I belong to that are important. Their decision making, part of decision making, and that is in Rialto, I belong to the Measure Y Oversight Committee, which this was a bond that was passed by the community of Rialto, and it's $88 million bond. So by being the oversight committee, we know where the money is going and how it is spent. Also, I sit on the Mobile Home Park Commission in the city of Rialto, and they're also important because a lot of people don't think that mobile home people that live in mobile homes are relevant. That they're a different group of people, but these are homes that these folks live, and they all should be treated with respect and equal as if whether you're living in a house that doesn't mobilize or live in a mobile home park. These folks they value. So that's just why I picked that commission, because I think it's important that the folks that live in the mobile home parks have somebody that represents them, that cares about their way of life. Also, I belong to the East Rialto Kiwanis. The history of the Kiwanis is national, and in my the organization that I belong to, and just like the other ones in Rialto and everywhere else around the world, they serve their community, and because of that, I joined because they represented what's good in everybody, that to serve others, and also I also sit on the board, like Al said, on the Home of the Neighborly Services. I went there as a volunteer one time when I was unemployed, and to keep myself busy and not be discouraged, I went and asked if they needed any help, and so they told me, yeah, you can help with this and different things, and when things got better for my life and I got a job, I still went back and helped out. When they had they served commodities at the home for the folks in their communities. So that's why I say that volunteering is very important. I have served not only my community, but the surrounding communities, because we're all in the same page. Because I feel what happens in one city affects all the cities, all the communities here in the Inland Empire. We cannot go untouched because we don't live there. We don't have the same zip code. As a parent, I'm a parent of 4 children, and out of those 4 children, I have 21 grandchildren. And from those 21 grandchildren, I have 35 great-grandchildren. So I have children in, I think, every school district in the county. So you see that I do understand. And one thing that I have tried to instill in my grandchildren, the ones that are older, is to volunteer. You must volunteer, because somebody was doing for you when you needed it, or the family needed it. So if we pass it on, and things will get a lot better for all of us.
Sada, wow, you have overwhelmed me. You've shared many other things that I had no idea you have been involved with. When Rialto celebrated their 100th anniversary, they created like a walk of fame, mm-hmm. and some people purchased a star. Sada was a star was put in her honor for all her contribution to the community. That just shows you how much and for how long she's been giving back to the community. But in the time we have left, you haven't really touched on your job as a field rep, and I know our Assemblywoman Cheryl Brown has done a lot for this area during her time in office. And what are some of the issues that, as a state official and you as part of her staff, that that her office is focused on for the community. Would you share more about those issues?
Yes. On one of the issue that my field representative for Assemblymember Brown is the seniors. Anything that has to do with senior housing, anything. Assembly member is a chair for the state with the Department of Aging and Long-Term Care. And when the senior communities heard of that, they were so excited. They were so happy because they understand that Assemblymember Brown does care about her seniors and all the other folks that she represents. We also have the veterans staff that issues are veterans. We have veterans. We have housing. Now with the water is an issue, and so she hosted a round table a couple of weeks ago, bringing in stakeholders with what their concerns were, and issues, and that information she takes back to Sacramento to share with the other members of the assembly. So it's very important that her work that she does, and she's very active in the field to represent the 47th Assembly District. So, but that's where I say. But when I was talking about volunteering, I was volunteering out there somewhere when she saw that my activeness in the communities was something that she wanted to have on her staff, and I have been with Assembly members and since the first day when she went to Sacramento. So, but there's also the 47th or anybody. We get calls from all over, and we get, as soon as that assembly member passes a bill or a bill that she has on the floor, community is aware of that, and she always suggests that her constituents let her know, and that's why we're there for, because we're her voice while she's in Sacramento, and to get that. To get the message out to the constituents. We have there's one of our staff members that's their field, that to get the word out to all the constituents either by the newspaper, or some of them have she has emails address, and everything goes out. There's no hidden anything. Whatever happens in Sacramento, whatever the status is, she will let the folks here in the district know.
Sada, thank you for that. I'm looking at the clock, and we probably have 5 more minutes before we go to break. And I want to thank you for serving Assemblywoman Cheryl Brown. She's doing such a great job, and all her other staff people. And she's given so much to the community, even before she was elected to office. But I'd like you to talk about the fact that you're president of the Chicano Latino Caucus and the event that they had not too long ago to honor Cesar Chavez, which is what they do every year, and your connection to the early movement. I mean, you were involved back. Wow, when the marches started in the 60s and 70s. In the 5 minutes that we have left, can you or 10 before we go to break, share something about the movement, Cesar Chavez, and because I know you recently went to his the memorial. The memorial and King, and so. Just tell us something about that whole experience of your life.
Well, thank you, Al. coming from a farm worker family, my dad and my mom both worked in the fields, and we were in Delano. We were raised in Imperial County, but my every year we would go up to Delano and stay with my aunt, and they would take us. We would go out into the fields and pick grapes and everything. We know every vegetable that there is because we picked them all. But it was we were young, and we just did like our parents told us. It was just something we would tell the kids in school that we were going to go visit our grandma. And my grandma doesn't live nowhere near Delano. But anyway, that in 1965, or was it 65, 64, when the movement was going to start, I remember that my mother started yelling at us to get out of the fields. And we were little. Of course, that was great for us because that meant we weren't going to be working all day. But yeah, we saw all the people out there, and they were all telling us that they had those bullhorns and telling us to get out of the field, and that's what. And I still really wasn't aware of what was going on because all we did was just go in the fields, pick the fruit, and then we would go home. And when we got to, even when we piled in the buses to go back to Delano, we still were, and we really, to be honest, we really weren't that concerned. We just were excited because we got off of work early. But as time went on, and we found out that when we weren't going to the fields anymore, for a while during the strikes, then we knew that there was a movement, and the history started. But I also have a good friendship with Dolores Huerta. We go way back, and I was invited one year to San Francisco. They paid my trip, but they flew me to San Francisco to help with an event, a Cesar Chavez parade that they have annually. And it was such an honor for me, and I was just really, really honored to be there. And I learned a lot of things, and how they organized it, how they put it together, the calls they made. They called me to come in to make the calls, and but it was just so interesting, and I had never had that kind of experience, and so that's why I said that getting out and volunteering and doing something, and that's how you learn. And I saw this picture at the Union Hall over there it was in San Francisco, and I saw the picture of Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez, and I go, wow. And they did a parade, and I says, why can't we do a parade? I've always wondered why we can't do a parade. And we haven't got there yet. But I saw the picture. And then years later, an opportunity came up. They had, the Rialto Middle School was going to, they were going to move to a new school, the students. So they made an education center for that school. And so when they started talking about naming it, I started getting involved, and I says, how can I do this? How can I do this? And I asked them whatever. They says, well, you just come before the board, and the board makes a decision. And so I did, and so I saw that they were getting signatures, and they go, well, and I asked them, well, some people are getting signatures. They go, oh, that might help. So the day of that we were going to do the presentation, I had 125 signatures, and so they couldn't decide who was going to get the name or anything. So it took me 3 trips to the school board and 2 more hundred signatures, and they renamed the school. instead of just Cesar Chavez, I had it renamed. I picked the names of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta because when I thought about it, the movement started with those two, and I felt that it was only fitting that that's the way the school would be named. And it's really, what's really nice is it has their picture in the front of the building. And I know there's a lot of people, even people that I know that don't live in Rialto, have not seen it. But it's a nice picture. Dolores Huerta came down, and when they did, Dolores and Paul Chavez, his son, were down when we did the open up the doors there, and that was such a, for me. It's something that I know that it's going to be there, whether I'm there or not. That's not going to change. That is not going to change. And those are just kind of the little things that I say that we all can do. Our event for the Cesar Chavez, that's got to be an annual thing, and I always hope that it'll be that way. When you mentioned La Paz, I back when I was part of MAPA, Mexican American Political Association, we went to, this was the first time that they had, when they first built that place for Cesar. And I took some students in a van. We took some students, and they had never been over there, but because it was a special day, the governors and everybody in the state was there. So this gave these students an opportunity to meet folks that govern our state. And so anyway, last year we went to La Paz, and they saw, now it's a national monument where Cesar is laid to rest, and the president, Arturo Rodriguez, came in and gave the tour for us. But again, this year we will be going again. I'd like to see more involvement from everybody, from the colleges and everything, because it is something that it's history, and if they've never been up there, the area is very beautiful, and where Cesar Chavez was laid to rest, it's very peaceful, it's just breathtaking.
Sara, I want to thank you. As I said, you know, just with the little that she's been able to share, she is a legend, and she has lived the history that has been part of our state, our nation, and our local communities. And at the bottom of my heart, this has been a very special moment. So we're going to go to break now, and when we come back, we have another individual that is involved in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Palazzo Show. Al will be right back with more of his A1 plan for San Bernardino.
The Dr. Frankensteins on our Supreme Court created a monster by declaring that a lifeless, soulless corporation is a, quote, person. But why stop there? Another coterie of Frankensteins is now trying to transform multinational private corporations into nations. Their secretly engineered Trans-Pacific Partnership magically endows private profiteering corporations with sovereign rights equal to those of real nation-states. Under TPP, a corporate nation, unlike individual citizens of real nations, could directly compel the U.S. or other countries to alter their laws in order to increase corporate profits. Of course, the Frankensteins dismissed such concerns as an irrational fear, claiming that no corporation would actually be able to force a country to change its laws. Oh, ask Flipper. While not yet able to confront a nation directly, corporations can get their home governments to sue in the World Trade Organization to overrule another nation's laws. That's what happened to our dolphin-safe tuna labeling law. Most Americans oppose tuna fishing with nets that also catch and kill the lovable flipper, so we have a law encouraging dolphin-free fishing methods. Tuna packers that comply can put Dolphin Safe on their labels, thus giving consumers a marketplace choice. Free enterprise at work. But some Mexican fishing companies got their government to complain that our label discriminates against their dolphin slaughtering methods. And a WTO compliance panel ruled that our label is a, quote, technical barrier to trade, essentially overruling a law that we the people enacted. This is Jim Hightower saying, and now, if TPP is approved, foreign corporations won't have to get their national governments to intervene, for they will become governments. For the lowdown on this, go to citizen.org/trade.
It gets real, it's live, it's really live, local and in motion. Every day on KCAA, the Inland Empire's only live local motion talk. KCAA 1050 AM and KCAAradio.com.
What have I learned so far? I've learned that there is no one path right for everyone. I've learned that without my high school diploma, I can only do so much. My options were limited. I found a free personalized learning program with Learn for Life that has a flexible schedule so I could keep my job while earning my high school diploma. I found new career training opportunities that would jumpstart my future. What have I learned so far? I've learned that I can change my life.
Are you 14 to 19 years old and looking for a free high school diploma program with flexible meeting times? This program allows you to keep your job or important family responsibilities while earning your high school diploma. If you've fallen behind on credits or dropped out of school completely, get back on track with free tutoring, a caring faculty, and one-on-one attention. For more information on how to reach your graduation goal, visit learnforlife.org. That's LEARN4LIFE.org. Or enroll today by calling 877-360-LEARN. That's 877-360-LEARN.
Here's a look at the KCAA community calendar. I'm Joe Flores. The Show and Go Car Show takes place Friday, May 1st through May 3rd in downtown Riverside. Car entries are $65 and limited to the first 1,000 entries. Get your vehicle registered today and get a dash plaque and program. Register before May 1st and receive a free t-shirt. All participating vehicles must be street legal and have auto insurance as mandated by the state of California. Trailers on the cruise route must also be registered. The Show and Go Car Show is brought to you by the Riverside East Rotary and Old Farts Racing Team. For more information, call Maylin Davis at 951-453-3548. That's 951-453-3548. Or go to showandgo.org. That's a look at your community calendar. I'm Joe Flores on KCAA 1050 AM. The KCAA community calendar is a public service of KCAA 1050 AM. To have your event featured on our community calendar, contact our studios at 909-885-8497 and speak with Di Rice.
For more local radio every day, tune into KCAA Loma Linda.
And now, here's A1 Al Palazzo.
Well, we're back, and I have another wonderful person with me, Joe Alaga. He is the president of LULAC. He's been the president for many years. LULAC is League of United Latin American Citizens. It's the most prestigious Latino organization in the nation. It's a civil rights organization. Joe, I want you to cover anything you want to say. Just get started.
Well, first I want to start with a little bit of a history of LULAC. That's an acronym for League of United Latin American Citizens. In California, LULAC was originally founded as the United American Workers of America and subsequently affiliated nationally with LULAC. Among LULAC's many achievements were the Menendez decision from Orange County, which formed the basis for better known Brown versus the Board of Education Supreme Court decision outlawing racial segregation in education. When the United States annexed a third of Mexico's territory following the Mexican-American War, nearly 77,000 Mexicans became U.S. citizens. These new citizens were systematically discriminated against, denied voting rights, excluded from decent jobs or a good education, and subjected to unprovoked physical violence. The sign, "No Mexicans Allowed," was to be found everywhere. Latino Americans responded by building a strong tradition of self-determination. Service organizations were started to champion Latino rights, and in 1929, a member of these groups met in Corpus Christi, Texas, and merged into a single self-help organization, the League of United Latin American Citizens. LULAC councils spread throughout Texas and into 45 states across the country. As LULAC grew, so did our achievements. LULAC-sponsored lawsuits resulted in landmark court decisions abolishing Latino school segregation and guaranteeing Latinos the right to sit on juries. Latino little schools from the 400 became the model of the 400 because the model of the enormously successful Head Start program. We have trained and found jobs for thousands of Latinos, supported immigrant rights, built housing for thousands, provided $5 million in scholarships to aid Latino students, launched programs for youths, women, and the elderly, and disabled, and reached out cooperatively, alliance with corporate America. A little bit about myself. I also came from the roots of an immigrant family. During that particular time frame as well, we were given the field work to do. I was born in Wasco, California in 1944, and my family was a migrant family that traveled from place to place. My fondest memory of this particular time was the transition from hand picking to machine picking, and me and my grandfather went out to a field, and we were stopped, and subsequently told that we were not allowed to pick there. It was only for white people. These and other types of situations like this have strengthened my understanding of what Latinos have to go through in our society. I was born in Wasco, California. We finally migrated into the inner city of East LA, lived in the projects there in Maravilla. Went over then to Ramona Gardens, and those of you who are familiar with Los Angeles know Ramona Gardens is still there, and also over to Boyle Heights. We finally moved out into the suburban areas of Pico Rivera, El Monte, Flor, and then out to Cucamonga. There I was going ahead and started to go ahead and look at my surroundings and felt myself kind of lost in that particular surroundings and said to myself, how do I get out of here? Well, I was lucky. I was told by a teacher that I had some intelligence in order to go and fulfill some of my dreams and took advantage of them. Todo es posible. Everything is possible. And so by about right after my high school education, I was allowed to go to the Claremont Colleges, a private university that most Latinos were not able to get into at that time. There was only 10 of us that were able to go ahead and fulfill that particular dream. I felt a little out of place there because most of the individuals there had money and were well educated in the fields that I was studying. I was studying an English major. I got my BA there, and then moved into, got my master's there also at the Claremont University as well. I started teaching. After that, I was going to go into law school, but unfortunately the cost was very, very enormous at that time, and it still is. And so therefore I was given a fellowship to the Claremont graduate school at that particular time, and was able to go ahead and fill out that and became a teacher. I was a teacher for almost 30 years, and I taught in El Monte, Whittier, and wound up teaching in Fontana School District for the last 25 years. I have other things that I want to talk a little bit now about our council, our LULAC Council of the Inland Empire, number 3163. Our objective is to helping Latina students succeed in education. Our mission of LULAC is to promote the economic attainment, political influence, housing, and civil rights of Hispanics. We meet every first Wednesday of every month at the Hutton Center, 640 Colton Avenue in Colton, California. And that's, again, the first Wednesday of every month at 6 p.m. And all of you are invited to go ahead and participate in our discussions. We are very well rounded as far as what we're doing and what we want to attain. An item of interest for all of us here was our tribute recently to Officer Gabriel Garcia, the individual that was shot in the head and when we responded to a disturbance call here in San Bernardino. We just had a tribute to him. We were very, very fortunate that a lot of individuals from our community came out and supported our tribute. Gabriel is doing fine at this particular time. I have to commend his father, who has taken care of him and his family and his mom and all the family members that were there that evening. If you could see the love that was presented to Gabriel and the love that also our community also reciprocated to him as well, telling him thank you for his heroism. A man deserves to be recognized for these particular things that he's done for our community, and basically, in a figurative point of view, has given his life for our community. Gabriel will never be the same. He's still going through both physical and psychological type of rehabilitation to get his speech back. But if you see him today, you are somehow given the opportunity to see a real hero in action, again, responding to this type of a disturbance, being shot by an assault rifle in the head. Takes a real hero to go ahead and do some of these like this. And so again, I myself, and I know this family wants to go ahead and thank the community who came out and responded to this. We had civil officials there from both the state and local officials. And again, we're also very fortunate to go ahead and applaud him, Gabriel that is, for his heroism during that particular time frame. LULAC is also very available to other areas of concern, health issues. We, with the Tushi group, Buddhist group, form clinics every 3 months. And what we do is we try to go ahead and bring individuals who do not qualify for health care, and most of them are undocumented individuals who come and get themselves serviced. Tushi brings out their dentistry. That's one area. They clean and administer to the needs of that particular person. And it's wonderful to see people smiling again to get their teeth fixed up. They also provide other things like prescriptions. I remember once in one of our sessions there, being in a second grade classroom, and a little girl was coughing tremendously and wheezing. And I'm wondering, well, what is going on? You know, why is this little girl wheezing and coughing so much? Well, unfortunately, the parents could not afford the spray that goes into relieving that particular congestion. And unfortunately, they don't know how to go ahead and go through the process of helping this little child do that. The Tushi group responded by giving them a little breather type of apparatus, and the child was relieved to have that. And so when you're working with these individuals, it's nice to see the recovery, the way that they are able to go ahead and take advantage of some of the things that unfortunately they were not able to go. They also offer, again, prescription, acupuncture, and also blood pressure type of services as well. And this can go on for a number of years. We've been doing this now for 25 years in this particular area. And so, again, it's nice to see that. We're also always looking for healthcare providers to come in and help us out and donate some of their time to help some of these individuals who otherwise would not be able to afford or go to a clinic. While we consider something like a $10 or $15 payment, for a lot of individuals, that is dinner for a week. So that's the reason why we go ahead and put on these health clinics for the disadvantaged individuals that we have in our community, and we have many. We also are working on a San Bernardino vision. We as Latinos want to help contribute to the economic stability of San Bernardino. At the current time, right now, the Latino community makes up 67% of the population. And if you count the African American population, we make up over 70% of the total population here in the city of San Bernardino. And we'd like to go ahead and be a part of that rebuilding type of the rebuilding type of San Bernardino. And so, again, we are open to this particular thing. We are working right now with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and trying to go ahead and see what we can do to help the economy of San Bernardino. We've also done some research on this, and unfortunately, the way the situation is in San Bernardino, we found that the sales tax base for San Bernardino and also the real estate tax base for San Bernardino is not an adequate amount of money for the services San Bernardino needs in order to go ahead and meet the needs of their community. And so by bringing in Latino jobs and also bringing in Latino types of work people, we can go ahead and try to help stimulate the economy here in San Bernardino. And that's, again, something that we need to go ahead and do since Latinos make up so much of the population here. In the county itself right now, Latinos are making up over 52% of the population. And if you count the African American community, people of color, almost to 60% of the population in the total of San Bernardino County. In our schools right now, we have our, in some of our school districts, the ones we work locally with, we have almost 85% to 90% of the school students in our school particular area. And unfortunately, they're going to be looking for jobs and looking for places that they can go ahead and bring up their families. And we feel that the vision we have for San Bernardino will help expedite some of these particular needs that our Latino students need, as well as other individuals who also have similar type of vision for their own families and their community. We also work with voter registration. We feel that this is an important facet in order for individuals in our community to get involved in their community. By doing their civic pride or their civic duties, we'll be able to go ahead and start to go ahead and orchestrate something that we feel would be advantageous to everybody in this particular community. We are working vigorously with school districts and trying to go ahead and go into the different school districts at least once to twice a year and into the civic and also into their history classes and try to go ahead and register our seniors or the individuals who are 17 going to be 18 by the next voting time, so we can go ahead and get them involved in the particular areas of concern, and again, get people in there that will go to help and prosper our community as it should be. San Bernardino was once known as the gateway to the county. Now, of course, unfortunately, to the hard times of recession, that is no longer so. But how do we go ahead and start to go ahead and get people involved in this? As Sarah was speaking, volunteering is one way that we can go ahead and do this, but also we need people to be a part of the areas that they're concerned with. As most of us already know, San Bernardino was considered to be one of the worst cities in the nation next to Detroit. Detroit now is making some headway in their particular responsibilities. The bankruptcy that is now being affected our community will continue to go ahead and linger for a while, but we have the human resources here in our community to go ahead and see these things come to fruition and have everyone again prosper by digging ourselves together, working together, and reaching a common objective that we all need to know, that is to go ahead and help our community grow and prosper. Other things that we do, we also meet with different schools. We're very much involved in our school districts. We meet with different superintendents on a continuous basis to see what we can do to help our students succeed. They're always telling us to think outside of the box, and that's what LULAC is trying to do, think outside of the box. How can we help our students succeed? According to research, they say that if a child is not reading at grade level by 3rd or 4th grade, that their attainment for achievement in education is very, very negative, very, very small results. So what we're asking some of the school districts to start to consider is something that was brought up to me when I do my research in Texas, something called families, that we can start working with the school districts and aggregate the students together in kindergarten and try to go ahead and say how many individuals do we have? How many females, how many males do we have? And during the 1st to 3rd grade, have the same teacher teaching those children. This way, the teacher will be able to find out the strengths and weaknesses of each child and therefore be able to work with that child. Not only are they going to be able to work with the child in trying to build their academic skills, but also working with the child to build a relationship with them. We all know that we all have something that we have innate in us, and that is something that we need to go ahead and continue with. How do we build relationships? We know that if we only meet a person once or twice in our lifetime, that the relationship will be very shallow, if at all. But if we start to meet that person continually, the relationship grows and prospers and becomes something called love. And this is something, again, that LULAC is wanting to go ahead and instill. Also, it would also help build a relationship with the parents, because often, too many times, our schools are looking at the negative of our children, and this is not fair. How can a child of 6 years old be told that they're not doing their best, that they're far below basic? This is not fair to the child. It breaks their self-esteem and their self-confidence. And in turn, what happens by the time they reach the 3rd or 4th grade, the self-fulfilled prophecy continues to go in and be brought up. And again, this is not fair to the child. People are putting negative labels on these children, and it's not fair to the child. What happens, though, is that the teacher then has to have a conference with the parent. And during that particular conference, the parent is told that the child is far below basic. Well, again, the parent starts to believe by the 3rd or 4th grade that the child is not fulfilling their responsibility academically, and they start looking at the child as far below basic. This is not fair to the child. Most children are giving you all they got. Have you ever been there going by an elementary school? You see the happiness and the joy that they have. They're running down. They can hardly wait to get to school. But what happens in the 3rd or 4th grade? After you're not reified at a continuous basis, and we all need reification, we realize that something like this can really be detrimental to our hopes and aspirations. I was able to go ahead and reach a child, I'll call her Maria, in the 6th grade. Maria had only been here since the 3rd grade. A very, very astute individual, brilliant, intelligent, but she had problems with the English language. But since when is English the only way to measure a person's intelligence? We have millions and millions of people out there cannot speak a word of English and yet are extremely intelligent. Maria was a case, though, that she took it upon herself with the books that I was able to furnish with her, bilingual books, and now is a teacher in one of our school districts. These things can be done. Todo es posible. Everything is possible. But then, like everyone else, we need the reification from other individuals that we are doing a good job. That goes for myself and other individuals who say, hey, we're doing the best we can with what we have. I know myself, when I went into the Claremont colleges, I was way behind. But I said it, I can compete with these individuals, and I did. Yes, it's difficult. Nothing is easy if you want to be successful. Right now, in the state of California, we only have 40,000 physicians, Latino physicians, in the state of California. With a growing populace that we have right now, this is not enough. We need to go ahead and start working on the human resource we have available in order to reach these positions. These are the things we have to do together as a community to help each other succeed and keep our economy at the growing rate it should be. Latino achievement, again, is very critical for us to do that, and that calls in all fields, whether it's in academics or in technical schools. We need to go ahead and do that. There are many plumbers making more money than I will ever make. Mechanics will be making more money than we can ever make. And those students have a different gift, and that gift has to be also be cultivated so this particular person will be able to contribute to the well-being of our community. We're also pushing in something called ethnic studies. Now, ethnic studies is something that would go ahead and help individuals of different cultures and heritages become more involved in their own understanding of what people of color have done in their community. Many times this is not given credence in the books that we're reading, and as a result, what happens with the child is that they're not aware that many African Americans, Latinos, people of color have contributed greatly to our community and its success, and that's why we are what we are today. But unfortunately, this is never given to the child, and therefore we feel that something is doing. So we're working with school districts in this particular area, and we're going to continue to work with these particular school districts in this area because we have to do it in all the content areas. We have to do it in science because, again, people have not been given credit for the scientific improvements in our community as a whole. We have to do it in math because, again, as we go back in history, the Aztecs were the first ones to go ahead and know the symbol zero. And before that, there was no concept of what that meant. Also, the astrology that goes along with it, the study of the stars and the things like this that we have to do. In literature, we have prolific writers. One that comes to my mind right now was a man called Richard Wright. Richard Wright was an individual who was a prolific writer and continued to go ahead and was very much an influence in my particular undergraduate studies. And through him, I was able to go ahead and find some relevance in what I was studying. So this is something we have to continue to do. In some of our school districts, we're also working with something called DACA and citizenship and driver's license workshops. This is, again, to help improve the status of our immigrant population. Our immigrant population is not at the level economically that we should be. We have about 43% of our population that are immigrants still living under $24,000 a year for a family of four. And so therefore, we have to continue to work on this. If you need to contact me, you can contact me at Joe, Joeolague, at ymail.com. That's Joe, Joeolague, at ymail.com, and I'd be happy to go ahead and meet with you or at least have some dialogue with you. Thank you, and God bless you.
Joe, I want to thank you. Wow, all the things that LULAC is involved with. I want to thank them for endorsing the vision that I have developed for San Bernardino, which I have been covering on this show. He mentioned voter registration. Just a few years ago, a handful of us registered close to 5,000 high school graduates. That was amazing, from the Chaffee School District all the way out to San Bernardino. And so they're showing me the cue cards that we don't have a lot of time left. I want to thank both of my guests, Sara Garcia and Joeolague. They have shared so many wonderful areas their organizations, their history, their work experience, over many decades, how they've given back to the community. And it's so important that we have organizations like LULAC and the Chicano Latino Caucus. And see you next week.
Palazzo Show comes to you on CNBC KCAA 1050 AM every Tuesday at 4 p.m. We invite you to join us next time as Al continues with his plan about San Bernardino.
KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.
I'm Tom Busby, CNBC Radio. President Obama meeting with Japan's Prime Minister at the White House today, declaring they're making progress on a 12-nation Pacific Zone trade agreement, but there's still been no breakthrough yet. On Wall Street today, stocks cut some early losses, with the Dow ending 72 points higher, the Nasdaq down only about 5 as the Fed kicked off a 2-day meeting on interest rates. After the bell earnings, high-def sports camera maker GoPro easily beat earnings forecasts, with sales surging in Europe and Asia. Profits at Kraft Foods down 16% on slowing sales, but it still beat forecasts. Panera Bread saw profits tumble 25%, and Buffalo Wild Wings suffered because of higher chicken prices and higher expansion costs. And Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams now destroying more than 265 tons of recalled frozen treats. That's $2.5 million worth. That's after Listeria was found in its production facility and products last week. Tom Busby, CNBC.
Introducing the new Steak Double Dia from Taco Bell. A warm, cheesy quesadilla loaded with double the grilled marinated steak plus a side of chips and salsa, all in a box. You'll have to see it to believe it. That's enough. Just take a bite already. The new Double Dia. 2 helpings of juicy, thick-cut steak inside a quesadilla with a side of chips and salsa.